and gentlemen, and thank you for watching the show. This is your Top Human Rights Organization Review, and I'm your host, Bryce Dolan. Now today on the show, we're going to look at 4 different top human rights organizations, but still cover 5 stories. We also have 2 videos that go with 2 of our stories today as well. Now to begin the show with Human Rights Watch, Belgium has enacted a raft of problematic counterterrorism laws, and its police have carried out heavy-handed operations in the past year. Those responsible for horrific attacks in Paris on November 13, 2015, and in Brussels on March 22, 2016, the deadliest in those countries in decades, were linked to Belgium.
This is Molenbeek, a neighborhood of Brussels. Many perpetrators of the deadly attacks in Paris in 2015 and Brussels in 2016 came from here. Since those attacks, the Belgian government has enacted a raft of new counterterrorism laws and regulations. The police have carried out hundreds of raids. Several of those targeted told us that the police had abused them or harassed them during these operations.
C'est moi qui est terrorisé par la police. En fait, en réalité, on me traite de terroriste. Il n'y a aucune preuve, rien, sans fondement. Mais dans cette histoire, la police me terrorise.
The vast majority of the people targeted in these police counterterrorism operations are Muslims or people of North African or Turkish heritage.
On voit très clairement qu'il y a un ciblage de ces populations-là et dès que le contact ne se passe pas bien, la police considère qu'elle est dans le rôle de pouvoir utiliser la force par rapport à ces personnes.
The Belgian authorities told us they are investigating a number of allegations of verbal or physical violence by the police since the Paris and Brussels attacks. They said that any abusive acts by the police are, quote, isolated incidents and by no means the result of a deliberate policy. However, some federal policemen we've spoken with, including 3 who are Muslim, told us they see a pattern of abuse and discrimination against minorities.
Pendant qu'ils vous battaient, ils vous ont pas posé de questions?
Non, ils m'insultaient.
Quelle sorte d'insulte?
Sale arabe, terroriste, tu mérites ce que tu mérites.
Ouais, il était en train de pleuvoir. Et c'est ça aussi le pire, c'est pour ça que c'était tellement humiliant. Il faisait mouiller par terre. Et au début, je devais enlever mes chaussures. J'étais sur mes chaussettes dans la pluie. Ils ont pris mon sac à dos, ils ont ouvert, ils ont cherché. Et puis, ouais, ils étaient très, très impolis. Il y avait un d'eux qui avait pris des biscuits dans ma poche, il me les jetait. Il a dit « Prends ta merde avec toi ». Et voilà. Puis ils sont partis, j'étais là.
Je ne voyais pas qui me tapait parce que j'étais menotté contre un mur. Donc on me donnait des coups de l'arrière. J'avais des coups, des hématomes au niveau de mes 2 bras. J'ai crié à demander le pourquoi. Pourquoi je me suis fait arrêter? La raison. J'ai le droit de savoir la raison pour laquelle je me suis fait arrêter. On ne m'a jamais répondu.
Hours later, the police accused Omar of being a terrorist, but then they released him without charge. Faisal Shafou was mistaken as the fugitive attacker in the Brussels airport bombing. The media dubbed this fugitive the man in the hat.
La cellule, il y avait du sang partout, c'était mon sang, et j'ai pas reçu de soins. Donc je suis resté tout nu durant toute la nuit. J'étais dans un coin, tout nu, sans couverture, sans coussin, sans matelas, à attendre, voilà.
One of Belgium's new directives imposes solitary confinement on prisoners detained on terrorism-related charges, even if they have not yet been convicted of a crime. The Belgian authorities have placed about 3 dozen prisoners in isolation for up to 23 hours a day as a result of this policy.
La détention à l'isolement peut devenir un traitement inhumain et dégradant. On sait que c'est très grave, ça peut confiner à la torture de maintenir quelqu'un à l'isolement. Voilà, après 7-8 mois d'isolement, ce que constate un médecin psychiatre. Le détenu explique parler au mur, à l'armoire, pour évoquer son désœuvrement et sa solitude. Il dit ne plus avoir de ressort. L'envie est morte. Son sommeil est très perturbé, entre autres, par les mesures de contrôle la nuit. Le bruit du guichet, clac, clac, qui s'ouvre et qui se ferme, le néon qui s'allume, mais aussi les cauchemars.
The Belgian authorities have a responsibility to ensure public safety and to do what they can to protect people from attacks like those in Paris and Brussels. But security measures should be carried out in ways that respect human rights and rule of law.
Moi, j'ai rien contre des interventions s'ils sont faits d'une manière normale, d'une manière polie, comme tu parles à tout le monde. Le problème, c'est qu'il y a une sorte de haine qui commence à sortir. Et ça, c'est pas bien. Mais bon.
After Shifu was released, the authorities found and arrested a man who reportedly has confessed to being the real man in the hat. Even so, the police have not yet dropped the criminal charges against Shifu in this case.
Maintenant, quand vous tapez mon nom sur Google, eh bien, on voit terroriste. J'essaie de me reconstruire. On m'a détruit, la police vient, en une soirée, boum, on détruit une vie d'une personne. C'est facile.
Now, the authorities need to determine how to enforce these counterterrorism laws while also respecting the human rights of innocent civilians. When they do that, then both sides, both the authorities and the civilians, can live in peace. But until then, the civilians are not only living in fear of another terrorist attack or a terror attack in general, but they're also worrying about being harassed by police. So hopefully Belgium can really figure out how to properly reinforce or enforce these counterterrorism laws. Now next, Amnesty International takes us back to Calais and the children crisis. Over recent days, the relationship between the French and UK governments has been strained by renewed disagreement over who should take responsibility for children at Calais. Now, the two governments have once more effectively abandoned these children in conditions which obviously put their safety and welfare at risk. This in contrast to the arrival in the UK of significant numbers of children over recent weeks, including many being reunited with family, an outcome required by the Dublin III regulations to which both countries are legally bound. After what had been a welcome advance by the Home Office and many local authorities, the latest spat and its impact on children's welfare is deplorable. While much political discourse here in the UK focuses on France's immediate duties to people on its territory, the reality is that both countries have responsibility, and their unwillingness to share this continues to be hugely damaging. Those shared responsibilities do not end with the legal obligations to enable children and some adults seeking asylum to be reunited with family in the UK. The 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the 1951 UN Refugee Convention, to which both are signatories, requires members of the international community to share responsibility for providing a place of safety to people who have fled war and persecution. For some years, France has been doing significantly more than the UK. Twice as many people claim asylum in France than in the UK, and is host to twice the number of refugees. But the reality is that refugee populations in neither country bear any reasonable comparison with those in far poorer, less stable countries further afield, countries like Pakistan, Ethiopia, and Kenya, not to mention Syria's neighbors. And as the governments of France and the UK squabble over responsibility, the capacity and will of these countries to continue to host refugees is on the wane. Pakistan is pressuring hundreds of thousands of Afghan refugees back to a country where conflict is already spreading. Kenya's intention to close its Dadaab camp presents a similar threat to around 300,000 Somali refugees. Now, we touched on the children in Calais earlier in an earlier segment, and we called out France on not helping these children refugees. It's not just France we need to call out, it's France and the UK. Both of these countries need to shoulder equal responsibility in caring for these adult asylum seekers and these unaccompanied children asylum seekers. So we're going to continue to call out these countries until these children are properly helped. Now, the International Committee of the Red Cross, the ICRC, is doing what it can to help refugees and damaged communities. Recurrent armed clashes, seasonal flooding, and droughts are events that feature prominently in this year's Somalia humanitarian calendar. Against a backdrop of decades of conflict and political upheaval, delivering assistance to thousands of affected families is quite challenging.
Somalia has been suffering from a conflict since the early 90s. It's been at war for a quarter of a century. Before the war, Somalia was already one of the poorest countries in the world, with one of the lowest indicators in terms of poverty or development. And to this already poor country, now you have to add 25 years of war and of devastation. You have as well the recurrent and chronic natural calamities that occur every year in Somalia. Every year we have somewhere in the country flooding, we have also a drought, and on top of that you have to add the cycle of violence because of the different armed confrontations between different groups. Somalis in this kind of situation that is so protracted are in survival mode. That makes us also, we as a humanitarian organization, having two heads. We have a head that is mostly focused on building up resilience, livelihoods, giving people the means to survive, the ways to survive. But at the same time, on the second head, we have a head for emergency. One thing is having to assist, say, 5,000 persons that had to leave their village with nothing, run away, and they run with what they had on because there was an attack or there was a flash flood or something. So those ones you have to purely assist, help them overcome this temporary situation of emergency, and if they are able to return. But a very different thing is supporting communities that have been enduring war for 25 years. And there we take extreme care to provide them not with food for today and hunger for tomorrow, but with seeds and tools. And very often in many places we will provide also cash, because there are many places in Somalia where little by little commerce and trade is reviving, and there are traders, and it's important to preserve as well this local economy. So we'll take very careful approach in doing no harm and not destroying the markets and not destroying the relations between communities. That's why sometimes we take a lot of time talking to women, in talking to elders, in talking to leaders, in talking to traders, to fine-tune the best way to support that community and really get them involved in the definition of the needs and get them help us find the best way to assist them.
Now, I want to applaud the ICRC for all the work they have done, and I'm sure everybody who has received care or help from them appreciates it as well. Now, next, Refugees International says the UN moves forward on a task force to protect climate change refugees. With extreme weather events like floods and hurricanes already forcing tens of millions of people from their homes each year, and with countless more uprooted by droughts, growing food insecurity, and a sea level rise, the urgent need for a game plan to address this issue cannot be overstated. The Climate Displacement Task Force's primary chore will be to identify ways for governments to avert, minimize, and address the impacts of climate change on forced displacement and migration of vulnerable and at-risk populations, such as those living in coastal areas, in the Arctic, which is warming twice as fast, and low-lying island nations facing permanent displacement from their homelands. While often referred to as climate refugees, those forced to flee their countries due to climate changes are not, in fact, protected by the 1951 Refugees Convention, leaving a gaping hole in the international legal framework. The task force will also need to consider how changing rainfall patterns and more extreme weather will increasingly drive migration of poor rural populations in developing countries, both internally and abroad. So there is such a thing as climate change refugees, those forced from their homes from natural disasters like floodings, hurricanes, tsunamis, you name it, any natural disaster. There is a thing, people are displaced from those disasters. Now we'll end the show back with Human Rights Watch. Now, this is an issue that is very touchy here in the United States, so we're going to read straight from the article, and this is going to be huge because this is about the Supreme Court. On Friday, the United States Supreme Court announced it will hear a case in its upcoming term that could help secure the rights of transgender students in schools. At the center of the case is Gavin Grimm, a 17-year-old transgender boy in Virginia. When Grimm transitioned at school, administrators allowed him to use the boys' restroom. After some parents and local residents learned of the arrangement and objected, the Gloucester County School Board enacted a policy that barred transgender boys from accessing boys' facilities in the school. In response, Grimm went to court for an order that would allow him to use a bathroom consistent with his gender identity. Now, all eyes are now on the Supreme Court, but regardless of how the court rules, it is important to remember that local schools can make a big difference by respecting and protecting their transgender students like any other members of their community. So Mr. Grimm won the court case to go to whichever bathroom he liked, and now the school is repealing it, or is appealing the verdict to the Supreme Court. And as this has been a huge issue all over the nation, it's been a big issue in sports essentially, because they moved a lot of things in a lot of championships, big sporting events out of Indianapolis because of this transgender bathroom law, rule, whatever you want to call it. So keep an eye closely on the US Supreme Court, as a transgender bathroom case is now on the table. Now, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching this show. This does it for your top human rights organization review. You can find the links directly to all these articles below in the description. I encourage you to check them out. But again, thank you for watching, and I was your host, Bryce Dolan.